The internet is cracked, the show that asks the question, can we coexist with our creation?
Hello, my name is Seth Camillo.
And I am Caroline Risberg, and we are The Internet is Cracked by Addicts for Addicts.
And today we are very, very lucky to have David Rodnitzky joining us. David is a very, very close friend. And beyond that, I would consider him a mentor, even though we are fairly close in age. David and I have known each other since synagogue, since Hebrew school, and we worked together in the, beginning of the century together at rentals.com. And at times, David was actually my boss. He was director of marketing at rentals.com. And he went on to have a really amazing career. And we're going to talk about that in Silicon Valley. We're going to talk about Silicon Valley and his career. And I just want to mention that he has written a book called Selling Your Marketing Agency, which is available on Amazon.com. And if you happen to be selling your marketing agency, right there, yeah, you want to talk, you want to get in contact with David, because it is probably the biggest financial transaction you will have in your life, and you want to make sure you get it right. And David knows the ins and outs, so he can get you what you should get. And with that, I say thank you. And how are you today, my friend?
I feel great. It's great to be talking to both of you. And yes, Seth, we've known each other for at least 40 years.
Yes.
And I have some good stories about bumblebees when you were in kindergarten. And
yes.
Maybe we'll save that for another podcast.
That's another podcast, I think. Yes. But you were a good boss. I hope I was a good employee. I found a few years ago a brief I had written to you about pay-per-click advertising. And I need to find that and send it to you again. But
I would love to see that.
History, yeah. So the first question is, you have a law degree. You went to the University of Chicago, just plugging that because that's very hard to get into. But you have a law degree from Iowa, and you became director of marketing. What brought you to Silicon Valley, and what made you get into marketing?
Well, I'll preface this by saying that I went to my 25th high school reunion more than a couple of years ago at this point, unfortunately. And one of my classmates said, David, it always seemed like you had a plan. And I started thinking back to my history, and I realized that nothing could be further from the truth. So even before I went to University of Chicago, I originally went to Brandeis, and I thought that was going to be my school of choice. And then I transferred to University of Chicago, and then I went to law school, and I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And I quickly decided in law school that I didn't want to be a lawyer, that I didn't find it to be, something that I enjoyed or that I had skill set for. So the truth is, I graduated from law school, and I had no plan at all, other than the fact that I had an ex-girlfriend living in San Francisco, and my best friend from high school was living in San Francisco. So I literally packed up my Volkswagen Jetta with all the clothes on my back and about 150 CDs, and just drove west to San Francisco, just trying to find something to do here, basically.
Yeah. And how did you get into marketing?
How did I get into marketing? Well, when I first came out here, I did all sorts of whatever job I could do to get paid money. So I was a user tester for a video game called Barbie Super Sports, which was Barbie rollerblading and snowboarding. And I worked at a law firm writing legal briefs. I got a job at a consulting firm doing some consulting and just kind of trying to do anything to pay the bills. And so eventually I saw this posting for rentals.com, and I was like, this looks interesting. Good URL, if nothing else. So I applied, and it so happens, and you were there, Seth, so you know this, that pretty much a large part of the management team was ex-lawyers. They had all gone mostly to Berkeley or Georgetown, and they were tired of being lawyers, and they had managed to either found this company or be early on in the company. So I think they kind of saw me as a kindred spirit, or they took pity on me, or a combination of the two, and they just gave me a job. And the job title was Director of Strategy. manager of strategy, which really meant literally nothing. And so they just basically had me run intellectual errands. So I would do competitive analysis. I would do, write content for the website, whatever they needed, I would do. And so I was pretty content with that because I had a job. It was fun. And then they did have a marketing department. And one day, the director of marketing quit. And it was a one-person marketing department. There was no one to do the marketing. So I just kind of volunteered, and I also had nothing else really going on at the company. So they said, sure, you can run marketing. So they left me with a $25,000 a month retainer to a PR agency and a $25,000 a month retainer to a brand agency. And they said, go do marketing. Now, keep in mind that at this time, we had not even launched the website or the product. So we were spending $50,000 a month on these two agencies, and we actually didn't even have a business that was live. So that was how I got into marketing. I mean, I just basically volunteered.
Wow. I think I only got hired because of my LSAT score, because they were all
Right.
lawyers. Yeah.
It's
So
all
they were
the
like,
same concept, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This was in the very beginning
Yeah. So it was
of the
it
whole.
was I was joined in 2000, and so really the internet bubble sort of started growing in maybe 1998, and by 2000 it was at its peak bubble. So you couldn't step outside your door without being invited to a launch party, and you'd go to a coffee shop, and everyone would say they say friend DA, not NDA, but friend DA. Here's my idea. Here's what I'm working on, and everyone was trying to pitch something, and there was actually the apartments.com, but they were all getting tons of money. Rentals.com, I think, raised, I want to say, $28 million
Oh, wow.
to launch their product, and everything was up and to the right. And then it sort of almost overnight, it all came crashing down. But that was in 2001. So it was about a year after I started working there.
So what did you do between then and the founding of 3Q Digital? Can you kind of just summarize?
So I mean, when I was at Rentals, I was doing this branding and PR for them, but I really realized that this is kind of ridiculous. Why are we spending this money on these people to just sort of talk about putting out a press release that no one's going to read? And so then I discovered a little company in Pasadena called GoTo.net, and GoTo.net was the first pay-per-click advertising company. It's where you only have to pay for a click if someone actually clicked on it, as opposed to branding or PR, where you might spend $10,000 on a press release, but there's no guarantee that anyone's ever going to see it. So I basically shifted all of Rentals money from these two agencies, which I fired, to buying ads on GoTo. And so we went from $50,000 with no results to spending $25,000 a month and probably getting 250,000 clicks on very specific terms like house for rent, apartment for rent, rent your apartment, whatever. And so then when Rentals.com eventually imploded, and I was one of the last 5 people there, sort of just waiting to get laid off, I started looking around for opportunities, and I got a job at a legal website called FindLaw, but I was doing marketing for them. And I refined my skills at SEM there. SEM stands for search engine marketing or pay-per-click advertising. I then went from there to work at a lead generation company called Adteractive, which also had a ton of buzz. At one point, they had an offer for $500 million, which they turned down, and eventually, I think, basically got nothing for the company. And then in 2007, I joined a dropship company, e-commerce company called Mercantilla. Again, also very well funded by some very impressive investors. And they were going to revolutionize e-commerce. And I was the VP of advertising at that point. So it was the first time I got in sort of a senior role. I was there for a year. At the end of that first year, I was traveling to India once a quarter to manage a team there, which was challenging. The company had some challenges with customer service. In fact, they had an F from the Better Business Bureau, which is hard to do. You have to work hard to get that bad a grade from the BBB. And then my wife was pregnant with our first son. So being at a company that wasn't going the right direction, and being in India when your wife is about to give birth is not a good best practice for parenting or husbanding. So I just decided, I was like, this is not right. So I'm just going to quit. And I figured I have enough money saved up. I kind of said I have enough money saved up to last for like 6 months. So, as long as I can find some income source within 6 months, I should be fine. And that's how I left. And then I actually, before I actually started the agency, I actually tried a couple different things. So I started a couple of affiliate websites where you get paid money if someone clicks on a link and buys something. So my most successful one was a wrinkle cream website where I was
Okay.
selling wrinkle cream online. I actually made about $100,000 of revenue and ended up probably about $20,000 of profit from that site until it got hacked. And then I gave up on it. I tried playing online poker as a living for about a week.
What?
Yeah. I got lucky. Like, I started playing it, like, within the first weekend, I won like first place and third place in online tournaments, and I was up like $3,000, and then it all
And
gradually.
let's keep things straight. Your wife has just given birth, or is, these are your ways that
Paying,
you're going to try to support
paying
your
for diapers
family.
with hold up.
Support your family.
Yeah. I mean, that wasn't my core plan. I was just having fun, but I was like, oh, I'm making money at this. Maybe I should just keep doing it. Why not? So then I had a couple other websites that I was playing with. I launched a conference, an advertising conference that I co-launched with a couple people, just throwing things at the wall. And so eventually people just kept coming to me saying, can you help us with my advertising on Google? And I said, sure. So I was just charging them some nominal fee to do it. And, it just kind of naturally started to grow to the point where I was like, I can bring on some people to help me with this. And I think the point in which you bring on other people other than yourself, you immediately sort of change from consultant to agency. And that's how the
Yeah.
agency was born.
And you had a lot of success.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, partly it's, it's better to be lucky than good. So it's, was in the right place at the right time. I mean, I really think, I was very fortunate to have discovered this whole world of Google and SEM advertising back when I was at rentals.com, and to have honed my skills for years doing it. So by the time I had left Mercantilla and I was on my own, there was a huge demand for quality management of these kind of campaigns. I mean, especially in the days that I started the business, it was about 90% human and 10% technology. It's kind of flipped now. But at the time, it was people who really, you really had to know the inner workings of the system. And there was lots of ways to sort of create arbitrage opportunities or to find inefficiencies in the market, if you will, where you could buy a click for 5 cents that was worth $5. And so I just used that expertise and that length of experience that I had to build 3Q. And we did sort of take it from just me doing SEM to fast forward substantially to getting to the point of 500 people with
Wow.
11 offices around the world, managing, I think, over $2 billion a year of spend on Google and other networks for clients. So it was a pretty, it was a pretty rapid, it was a rapid ascent, and it was a fun ride.
I have a question. I mean, that is so interesting. But when you started with marketing, there was no really, I mean, I'm probably wrong in this, but that was not really classes for marketing the same way, right? With how you deal with internet. How is it? Were you more self-learned? Like you figure things out how to do it? Because now when I see kids do marketing, they're actually going to school, and they're learning. And
Right.
is that fair to say that you
Yes,
you were one
absolutely.
of the
I mean,
guys who figured it out?
no, absolutely. I mean, I think that there were marketing degrees. You could get a marketing concentration at many colleges and then business school, but for digital marketing,
Right.
there was nothing. In fact, I remember in 2004, I interviewed at Intuit, which runs TurboTax and Quicken and a bunch of these companies. I was very excited. They had an SEM job there, and I really wanted it. And the vice president of marketing said in the interview, "What are the 4 Ps?" I was like, I've never heard of the 4 Ps. I have no idea. And it's an old marketing phrase. I think it means product, price, positioning, and I already forgotten the fourth P. Some fourth P. And so the recruiter called me up after the interview and said, "Well, I'm sorry, we can't offer you the job." And I said, "Why not?" She said, "Well, because you don't know traditional marketing." And I said, "Well, let me just state something for the record. This job is asking for someone with SEM experience of 4 to 6 years." I said, "I have 4 years of experience. The only person that I know of with 6 years of experience would be Larry and Sergey at Google." So the fact that this guy thought he needed to hire someone who understood traditional marketing, when in fact there's a million people who could answer the 4 Ps question, but there were only at that time probably 500 people who could answer some very basic questions about how Google advertising works, was kind of
Yeah.
crazy to me. But today, to your point, there are digital marketing concentrations in undergraduate. There's a million courses you can take. And so, yeah, I mean, there's more of an expectation that you're going to be classically trained. But when I started, it was really kind of the wild, wild west, and we were just inventing things as we went. And I think it probably attracted people who were sort of excited about the fact that there wasn't any universal degree that existed. It attracted sort of renegades, maybe. What you tell people is that when I came out here in 99 and 2000 and I met founders then, the people who I met were here because they were genuinely excited about technology and innovation. And they were just doing this because this was their passion. And, sure, there were stories about people making huge amounts of money, but for the most part, people were just kind of excited about innovation. And I would say that today, those people still exist, but there's a lot of people who, when I graduated from college in the 90s, would have gone and worked at McKinsey or Goldman Sachs because they thought that was the fastest way to make a buck, and are now starting startups because they think, oh, this is an opportunity I start something in my 20s, I sell it for $10 million, I never have to work again. I mean, it is kind of fascinating though, because Silicon Valley is really sort of a melting pot, and you get people from all over the world. You get a ton of very smart people. I mean, I think the thing that I probably take for granted the most is the fact that on any day of the week, I can have a coffee in Silicon Valley with someone who is just brilliant and is innovative and is got ideas for changing the world. And I think that's not to say that there aren't smart people everywhere in the world, because there are, but the concentration of talent in Silicon Valley of people who are just so disruptive and innovative is really amazing. It's something that I do appreciate.
Do you think there's an ethos, like, a heartbeat to Silicon Valley? Because I think Caroline and I think of it a lot like Hollywood for smart people in a certain way. That, there's a sort of, in Hollywood, you sleep in your car and wait tables for your big chance. Is there a sort of mentality like that out in Silicon Valley? Because we are doing a show, The Internet is Cracked. We're doing it about the internet, AI, and robotics. And in where you live and where you have been successful is the center of all that. So it is interesting to our viewers to know what is in the hearts of those that are making the materials we consume.
Well, first of all, I would say that, one thing about Hollywood and San Francisco, and for that matter, New York and finance and DC and politics, is there's a lot of people who are just content to have a good job and aren't trying to break the system or become billionaires. I mean, there's plenty of people in Silicon Valley who are like, yeah, I'm a manager at a 3,000 person software company, and I have a good life, I get a good salary, and I'm very content. So there are people here who are definitely sleeping in their cars and have come out here and said, I'm not going home until I have X amount of money or whatever. But there are also the majority of people. I mean, I always used to think when I ran my agency, I was like, oh, I have all these talented people on my team. They could all go and start their own agencies and make a lot more money. Why aren't they doing it? There must be something I'm missing here. And the answer is that some people just want comfort. They don't want risk. I mean, not everyone is set up to be an entrepreneur, because it's a lot of heartache. And the truth is that Silicon Valley creates this myth that everyone who starts a business is going to become a millionaire or billionaire. And the reality is that about 70% of the companies out here fail. And the 30% that don't fail, probably 80% of those, the founder sort of ends up getting enough money that sort of would have been the equivalent of having that founder just worked at another company for 10 years. And then it's the top 2 or 3% that make real life-changing money. So, and I think Hollywood is the same way, right? I mean, Hollywood, we always see Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, we hear that they made $100 million in a film, but the truth is, in that film, there's 1,000 extras who are all making $240 a day, and probably are pretty excited to be there.
Yeah.
Still pretty
Yeah,
fun.
no, that's a good point. It's a very good point. I think so too. Like in most people, I think you're right about that. Most people are percentage-wise are just happy being comfortable. And the few ones who are the ones who travel or they try and do this or it's not percentage-wise, not so many. I can see
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I sort of think about sometimes. I think about someone like Mark Zuckerberg. He had an offer early on at Facebook to sell to Microsoft for $900 million, and he would have gotten about 600 million of that, I think. And he decided not to sell, and now he's worth whatever, I don't know, 100 billion or something like that. And so part of me thinks like, well, number one, I have this general theory that most billionaires are just kind of have a sickness about them. Like, why do you need $100 billion? But I also think that like he has a certain risk profile. Like, if you had said to me, look, you can have $600 million now, or you can gamble it all and you have the chance to make 100 billion, but you also have a chance to get zero, I'd be like, I'll take the 600 million every day. So I'm pretty risk adverse. I mean, but there are these people in Silicon Valley, Elon Musk. I mean, you hear these stories, and they bet it all on red time and time again. So and maybe it's almost an addiction at that point. It's like it has, because if you have $600 million versus $100 billion, your life doesn't change that much, I don't think.
Do you think that dictates the type of technology that we get and the breakneck speed with which everybody is going at?
Sort of. I mean, I think a lot of people in Silicon Valley are focused on a goal, which is either to be the best, the leading software company, or to have X amount of money. And they don't necessarily stop and think a couple chess moves ahead around, well, what happens if I do build this giant company that is very powerful and can influence lots of people? Are there any negative consequences I need to think about? Should I slow growth, or should I purposely say no to opportunities for the good of humanity? I mean, I would say Silicon Valley has struggled with that. I mean, there are some people in Silicon Valley who do try to live that sort of positive life. I mean, there are B Corps out here with public good companies, but there are also a lot of companies that just grow, and they get a pat on the back. I mean, I will say, like, there's one of the things that I found interesting in Silicon Valley is there's been some founders who have been forced to step down from their company for some sort of bad action. So in either sexual harassment or abuse towards employees, or some sort of other bad behavior. But they were successful companies. Those founders leave, and within 3 months, you almost always hear, so and so who left so and so company has now raised $500 million from the top VCs in Silicon Valley. And there's a day of hemming and hawing where people say, well, wait a minute, didn't that guy get fired for sexual harassment? I guess he's a successful entrepreneur, so he deserves a second chance or something. I mean, I don't even know what the argument is, but you see that all the time, like, where people talk a good game about how they care about ethics, but when push comes to shove, and there's an opportunity to make some money, then a lot of people look the other way and let things proceed.
The race for AI in and of itself seems to be not monitored as well as it should be. It seems as though people are racing. Do you share that analysis?
Yeah, I do, actually. I mean, I think there's this book called The Precipice, which was talking about what are the existential threats to humanity, and they list, like, nuclear war, a pandemic, global warming, and then AI is one of them. And I think the writer sort of concludes that AI is the greatest threat to technology, or to society. And he says it's like human society is like a teenage kid who's like tinkering with something and not really thinking about what's going to happen. He's just playing around not think of the consequences. And I do think that that is kind of a concern. I mean, it's a big
Yeah.
concern. The crazy thing about AI is that its intelligence is growing exponentially, and humans really are only usually able to think of things linearly. They can't see how things are on an exponential curve. I'm stealing this from the Ray Kurzweil book, "The Singularity is Near." Um,
Mm.
but we already have. I saw this morning that the new OpenAI reasoning AI has the IQ, have 120 IQ, and the average human is 100 IQ.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
imagine 5 years from now, it's going to be
Yeah.
Yeah.
300. You know?
And you know what? That's not what you just said earlier, but like addiction, is that an addiction? Like, oh, I can make more money in this. And we have been talking about this when it comes for AI. To me, it's like now they are creating something who's gonna be, as you said, what is gonna be like in 5 years from now? Are they creating something that just they can't stop because they want to see where it's gonna end? But maybe we are creating something that's gonna eventually, I don't want to say kill us all because it's not going to happen, but I almost feel like we creating an atomic bomb.
Yeah. In this book, The Precipice, they talk about how when the atomic bomb was being developed, there was a debate among the scientists over whether the consequences of splitting the atom would result in all the oxygen in the world being sucked up immediately and everyone dying. And they concluded it was like a 0.2% chance of happening.
Mhm.
But that's still like 2 out of 1,000 or something like that. And they went ahead anyways. It's like if they happen to be wrong on that, the whole of the world would be dead.
Well, 2
But
out of 1,000 sounds like a small number, but if you do that enough times, it's gonna happen. I mean, it's significant. It's significant.
and I don't
Yeah.
know what the exact number was, but I mean, but to your point, it's like, yeah, I mean, if I told you that you had a 2 in 1,000 chance of dying if you got on an airplane, you probably wouldn't get on because that means that like 2 people out of every 2 flights, 3 flights die.
Good job. I wouldn't. Yeah, no, I think that's interesting though. Just also what you said earlier about like almost like it's an addiction we can't stop. Like is 600 million billion enough? No, I want to have
I
this
think
much
that's what
more
I'm
or
getting.
this.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Are these you're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Sam Altman, are these guys just addicted to winning?
It could be. I mean, I actually think it's more like like I said, I think it's more of a disease more than. I mean, I guess it's addicted to winning. You call it that. I'd say it's an addiction to something, but it's like this this desire to have more and more and more.
Yeah.
There's this concept of like hedonic adaptation, which is that whatever happens to us in life within 3 months, we adjust back to normal. So you could have a incredibly tragic event like you lose someone you care about, or it's incredibly positive event like you get married or you win the lottery. Inevitably, you go back to the medium baseline.
Mm.
And so I wonder if these guys, like, they get another $1 billion and it makes them happy for 30 minutes. And then they're like, yeah, but someone else has more. And, you know,
Yeah.
there's a great, I don't know if you've seen this eulogy by Kurt Vonnegut of Joseph Heller. He said, in his eulogy, he said, Joseph Heller and I were at a party at a hedge fund billionaire's house in Rhode Island. And I said to Joseph Heller, doesn't it trouble you that this guy makes more than a day that you've made in your entire life on Catch-22? And
Mm.
Joseph Heller said, yeah, but I have one thing this guy will never have. And Kurt Vonnegut said, what's that? Enough.
Mm. That's a
So
good
I
So
think
one.
about that all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see, if you have $240 billion, like
I gave me
Elon Musk,
chills.
what,
Yeah.
what is what are you trying to solve for? Are you
Yeah.
actually happy? I actually did see, by the way, just as a tangent, just yesterday, there was an article about the amount of security detail that Elon Musk has. He has, I think, 20 full-time security guards and a doctor who travels with him full-time. And I was thinking, like, what kind of life is that? If you have
Yeah.
that many people, you can't have a genuine conversation with some random person. I mean, isn't part of life spontaneity that you
Yeah.
walk down to the beach and you run into some interesting person and have that? He can't have that. I mean, he can't go anywhere without being surrounded by Like, how is that worth $240 billion? I don't
Yeah.
get it.
And you've done really well, but you can go to dinner with your wife.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, I would much rather be the 10th employee at Facebook than Mark Zuckerberg. I'd like to be the
Yeah.
guy that made $400 million and that no one has ever heard of.
do you think this could be a diagnosis? What we were saying, not having enough, I have enough. Do you think that may be a diagnosis of Silicon Valley for our viewers who are watching this when they're trying to think what is driving these people? Do you think that may be the key differentiator?
Well, I mean, I think I think that's one thing. I mean, I think to be clear, there's plenty of people in Silicon Valley who don't have this drive, and there are also plenty of founders who don't sacrifice their values and say no to opportunities that could make them a lot of money. So it's not universal in Silicon Valley, but yes, when you look at the most quote unquote successful people in Silicon Valley, the ones who have billions and billions of dollars, then yeah, there's something there that they have an unlimited appetite for risk, and they have an unlimited need for recognition and power, I think.
Yeah.
Do you feel an electricity being there? I mean, you've been there longer than your hometown.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I'm kind of used to it now. I will say that, like, when I was in the sort of heart of running my agency, and we really focused a lot on companies that were either startups or that were just past the startup stage and starting to grow. And there was something very exciting to me about being able to meet a founder with a vision and a dream, and to, over the several years, help them achieve that dream and gain, world prominence. I sometimes, one of the stories I share is that we got introduced to a company in Half Moon Bay, which is this little tiny town, population probably 10,000 on the coast. And there was a young founder, and he was trying to build a new type of camera. And he was like, I have this cool camera, I want to market it. And so we went onto YouTube, and we put a lot of time into sort of showing this camera whenever anyone was doing anything outdoorsy and fun. And the camera was GoPro, which now is just kind of
Wow.
everyone knows what GoPro was. But at the time, we were trying to, I remember talking to a venture capital friend of mine, and I said, you should invest in this company. It's like, what is it? It's like, well, it's like a sports camera or an action camera. He's like, I don't know. That doesn't sound interesting. But that's the kind of fun experience where it's like, I mean, look, I mean, I think I probably contributed 0.1% to their success at most. But we were there in the early days working with the founder and the founder's cousin and trying to sort of build this thing. And that's when it gets fun, because there are every year something comes out of Silicon Valley that we all start to use. I mean, this whatever this webinar software we're using is probably from Silicon Valley, and your iPhone is from Silicon Valley, and you watch your movies from Netflix in Silicon Valley. So, I mean, that is kind of fun in that respect, to see the new things that are happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are huge. I mean, it's just like even Netflix, all of them are there. They're all coming out.
Yeah. When I used to
everyday life.
something new. I mean, when I used to host friends who had come in from out of town in Silicon Valley, I would drive down the peninsula. I'd be like, okay, well, we're in San Mateo. That's where YouTube was founded. Now we're in Sunnyvale. That's Yahoo. We're in Mountain View. That's Google. We're in Los Gatos. Everywhere, every town has a major silicon brand that you've heard of that's been founded there, and that is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually.
I think that is comparable to the Hollywood experience. It's something different. You work with a celebrity for a couple of days or something like that, and it fuels you. It's exciting, and I think probably when Tom Cruise walks on set, probably everybody has a micro increase in their blood pressure, because he is the movie star, and that's probably the same feeling being near YouTube, Google. I know you used to go to the Google Google campus all the time. And that
Yeah.
probably was a very cool feeling to be a part of that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, especially in the early days. I mean,
Yeah.
when there were, I mean, the first time I went to the Google campus, there were probably 600 people working at Google, if that, maybe less,
Uh,
probably close to 200 people. Um, there was early days at Google, I got invited to speak about what the experience of being an advertiser at Google was. And
mm.
my host for the speech was Sheryl Sandberg, but she set it up and invited me to Google. And then I spoke to the entire management staff. And the one of the guys I spoke to, I was actually complaining about something in my speech about search engine optimization because the website I worked for wasn't getting optimized the way I thought it should be on the search results. So this engineer came up to me and said, "I think I can help you." And so we talked offline, and he gave me sort of a secret backdoor to Google.
Ah.
This would never happen today. And so for a while, we went from getting no rankings on the first page to getting 7 out of 10 rankings. We were showing up dominating. That engineer then went on to become the co-CEO of Salesforce, and is a
Oh.
big player in Silicon Valley. And I actually saw him a couple of years ago at a Google event. I said, "Do you remember from 2001, this happened and this happened?" He's like, "Yes, I do remember that actually."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That
So,
whole marketing is very not confusing for me, but like if you want to advertise something and how with it clicks and how it goes out and how do millions of people see you? What do you call it when something go viral or whatever? Do you understand? I mean, you're working with marketing. Like how does that work? Like,
well, I don't understand all of it. I mean, I think, it's kind of like people say that, who was it? It was like, John Locke was the last person to ever know everything about everything in the world. It's like
mhm.
in 1680, you could potentially say that you knew everything. Obviously, that's kind of ridiculous because you're not taking into account like indigenous people and everything. But I'm talking about like Western civilization. And so I think the same is probably true for digital advertising. There was probably a point in like in 2000 when I started where you could sort of say, okay, well, I know enough about display to be dangerous. I know about SEO. I know about SEM.
Mhm.
Now I know about email marketing. That's all. Today, it's kind of like the world of medicine. Like, you used to be a general practitioner, but now you're a neurologist who focuses on movement disorders with a specialization in Parkinson's disease, with a hyper specialization on Parkinsonism caused by exposure to heavy metals or something. I mean, that's what's happening in marketing too. I mean, you have people who are not just Google experts, but they're Google experts specifically with respect to direct to consumer brands, specifically health direct to consumer brands, specifically ones that are offering a monthly shipping or something. You have people who have that much expertise and they've sort of drilled down. And so when you talk about something like going viral, there are people who are number one who build uh, influencer campaigns for you. So to get people who already have lots of followers on Instagram or TikTok, whatever, to sort of help you build your brand. There are consultants that will come in and help you figure out what is the right messaging, how frequently should that message go out, who do you target, how do you sort of keep your audience engaged. So yeah, I mean, when something goes viral, sometimes it goes viral just because the internet just found it amusing or interesting. But sometimes it goes viral because there's some marketing work behind the scenes that is making it do that. I mean, I remember there was some song about KFC that my kids were singing, and it was like it was a very stupid song, but it was clear to me that there was a huge corporate marketing push to make this attractive to kids. But my kids had no idea. They're like, "Oh, it's just a cool song, Dad." I was like, "Yeah, you guys are being played."
No, I think it is a little bit like Hollywood that no, I interviewed my film professor, and I was talking about how documentaries have changed. It used to be one camera, one light, or a couple of lights, but I I did the sound. I mean, all my documentaries, and now Netflix, all these streamers have increased the well, I don't want to say quality, but image quality and sound quality to a point where you need a full crew. And it's a kind of similarity. Do you feel a little bit like maybe that individual disruptor is going away from Silicon Valley, or is that still there?
I think the answer is yes and no. I mean, so yes, in the sense that if you're trying to compete against the existing software companies that exist out there, you need a lot of time, a lot of engineers, and just a ton of work to sort of get your foot in the door. So in 2000 when I moved here, I mean, you could literally start a website like rentals.com with no experience in building a website and get $28 million to do it because people are like, oh yeah, sounds like a good idea. We need some sort of software for property managers. That's much harder to do now. Now you have to go through several different seed rounds of funding. You get your seed round, you get your post-seed round, your Series A, your Series B, your Series C, and it takes years and years. The flip side of that, though, is more and more we are getting to this world of no-code, low-code development, which basically means that's getting more and more that you can sort of describe what you want to build, and AI will sort of give you a prototype, and then you can continually refine it. And in some cases, you can even get AI or some other software companies to start actually developing the code for you. So that the barrier to entry, that you don't have to be an absolute genius software developer to sort of be able to create something interesting.
Well, Sam Altman, I know he said that he believes with AI we'll have the first single person $1 billion revenue company.
Possible. I mean, there's actually there's a statistic going around right now with these. They show like 10 companies and how many employees they have and how much revenue they have. And the company that was the craziest one, which is doing like $5 billion of revenue with 42 employees or something, is actually OnlyFans, which is pretty much, I think, a porn site. I'm not exactly sure.
Oh yeah, that site.
I think that's the main purpose of the site. But their revenue per employee is like $20 million an employee or something crazy.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Microsoft was like $1 million an employee. These guys were like 10 times what they're making. So
that's absolutely amazing. Can I ask you, because I feel like the people watching are going to have this question in their head, do you feel like the apparatus, the structure of Silicon Valley maximizes the output?
I think it rewards fast-growing companies that are on track to make a lot of money. It rewards profitability, and so sometimes that means more output. If you're Netflix and you can produce more independent series, which gets you more subscribers, then you do it. Sometimes it restricts output. So, there's all sorts of antitrust litigation going on right now that suggests that the big players, the Googles and Apples of the world, have purposely tried to quash competition and try to essentially have less output, less innovation, because they've got cash cows and they don't want someone to come along. I mean, I think it's interesting because if you look at ChatGPT, I don't know if this will be proven true or not, but one of the things that happened with Google when Google first launched is Google went from being a noun to a verb. So we all say, oh, let's Google it, right?
Right.
And so when ChatGPT launched, Google already had plenty of AI that they had developed. They had a great system internally, and I suspect it was as good or better than ChatGPT, but they may not have released it because they didn't know how it was going to hurt the monetization of their advertising products. And so when ChatGPT released, it is at the point now where it's close to being a verb, right? It's like, well, I don't know the answer. Let's ask ChatGPT. And so that
Oh.
that may end up really hurting Google, because now Google is behind from a branding perspective. They have to convince people that Gemini is as good as ChatGPT, but Gemini is not. I mean, I think people use it and they're integrating it into their search results, but um, it doesn't have the branding memorability. I mean, if at the end of the day, if you asked 100 Americans, name five AI companies, probably 60 or 70 of them are going to come up with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I mean, I can name 5 or 6 just because I'm in Silicon Valley, but I don't know. Can you guys
Right.
name? Did you know Gemini? I mean,
Yeah,
have you heard of
Gemini,
Gemini?
Gronk,
Yeah. I mean, now
Llama.
I know, but yeah, but what comes up is ChatGPT. That's the first, and you're right. When you talk to people, that's the one they're saying. I don't hear people saying Gemini.
Yeah. So if I mean, think about
I
it.
don't, but
Yeah, and there's Claude, that's the Microsoft one. There's Perplexity. There's Anthropic. But if you think about Google and from the output question, I mean, if theoretically, if Google had this amazing AI, they should have put it into the market
yeah,
early, but they didn't, and I think they didn't because they didn't want that sort of competition. And unfortunately, it's a sort of innovator's dilemma. You know, they by not innovating, they let someone else innovate, and now that could be a long-term threat for them.
I think it's very interesting that San Francisco is not that big of a city, especially compared to worldwide cities, and how much of our really societal lifeblood comes out of this relatively small area. You know, it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
yeah, it
Well,
is.
I had a discussion with a venture capitalist a couple years ago, and I said, you know, are you worried that like we're seeing venture capitalist firms set up in Austin, Texas, and in
Mm,
Boston and in Miami? There were all these
mhm.
places that were becoming the next Silicon Valley, and they even had names like there was like Silicon Mountain, Silicon Alley, Silicon Prairie. Everyone had a name that was. And he said his comment was like, look, you can start a shopping, company selling wrinkle cream or maybe
Yeah,
selling cheap stuff from China uh, in Ann Arbor. That's fine. But when you're building enterprise software, there's such a huge network effect to being in Silicon Valley, to being able to partner with other companies, to have engineers who have spent 20 years building hardcore technology, to have people coming out of Stanford with computer science degrees. He said that will never, in his opinion, that will never be replicated. And so far, it's kind of been proven true. I mean, there
mm,
was a story last week about Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the most well-known venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. They opened an office in Miami with a lot of bravado a couple of years ago, sort of taking advantage of this notion that Miami was the next hot spot for entrepreneurs, and they just closed the office this week.
really.
And so yeah, and so a lot of people sort of are saying, "Oh, California, it's a dying republic." So the streets of San Francisco are filled with feces and homeless people and drug addicts, and the bloom is off the rose. And there's some truth to some of that, but at the same time, there still seems to be no place in the world that brings as much innovation as Silicon Valley does.
Yeah, it's true. Because you would think like maybe they will go to states that are cheaper to live in or taxes and all of that kind of stuff. But it's the base is there. So I can see why you would come there because all the people are there and it make sense in
Yeah,
one way, you know.
exactly. I mean, I had a friend who moved to Texas, and he said, "Oh, lower tax rate,
Mhm.
very kind of laissez-faire, let people do what they want. Houses are super cheap relative to Silicon Valley. I mean, the average house in my city now is I think $2 million,
Mhm.
and we're talking about like 1950s ranch style houses. We're
Yeah.
not talking about mansions.
Yeah.
But I had a friend who moved to Texas, and he was there for 2 years, and he came back and he said, I just I just didn't have the same interesting conversations, and
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I had the energy of the connectivity. I wasn't like sort of having interesting moments where I was meeting entrepreneurs. And so he came back and he's paying the higher taxes, but he
Yeah,
seems a lot
but I
happier.
yeah. And he meet his people, the innovators and So on that note, I want to ask: so if you are an innovator or want to be an innovator, you you should move to Silicon Valley.
Well, I think Silicon Valley is certainly something you should consider. I mean, there everyone's different. I mean, I think, look, I mean, I always wanted to open an office in Iowa City, where Seth and I are both
Mm.
from, because I thought, like, well, if I take the top 10% of math grads from the University of Iowa,
Mhm.
those folks are going to be smart, no matter what. I mean, you take the top 10% of math grads from any good university, and they're going to be talented people who can do good work for you. Um, and so you could make an argument to say, like, start your office in Iowa, and you're getting people for a third of the price. Not to mention the fact that if you want to hire someone from Stanford computer science department, you know,
Mhm.
they're not going to work for you. They're going to either go to Google and get paid $500,000 right out of college, or they're going to do their own startup, right? So I think that there is a lot of good reasons to come to Silicon Valley, but everyone's different, I guess I would say. And there are certainly success stories outside of Silicon Valley. There are certainly many great companies that are based in Chicago and Austin, other places.
But I will say this, that I have seen some home tours on, they're funny. They're meant to be funny and also a little bit sad, where like Palo Alto will do a home tour of what looks like a crack house, and it'll be going for $2 million. And, and that's because of what is available in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
That's,
I mean, it's also because people get paid a lot more money here too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there was a story, I don't know if it was true or not, but someone said that I read that if you're a family that makes less than $250,000 a year in Palo Alto, you qualify for subsidized housing. So for most people making $250,000 a year, that would be like, if you're in, you know, Charleston, South Carolina, I would imagine that puts you in the top 5% maybe of earners. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah.
say higher.
Here, family of
Yeah.
two making 250,000. I mean, you're probably struggling. There was a plot of land in Atherton. Atherton is the richest zip code in Silicon Valley. Steph Curry lives there. A lot of, I think,
Oh, okay.
I think you know, Sheryl Sandberg, all these people live there. And it was a 1 acre lot, and they were listing it for $20 million. It was just the land.
Oh, just
And
the
a friend
land.
of mine said, "Oh, that's a great investment, because you'll be able to build a house on there for 10 million, and then sell it for 50 million. So you're going to invest 30 million, you'll make 50 million or 20 million." That was his argument. I don't know if he's right or not, but the fact that you'd even consider selling a plot of land for 20 million is pretty crazy.
But I think what we have learned from our discussion is, despite all the, oh, there's homeless people, oh, Twitter X is leaving, at the end of the day, the home of technology is Silicon Valley. I think that's a truth.
I mean, I went into the city a couple weeks ago, and yes, I saw some homeless people, but I also took a self-driving taxi to
Mm.
Fishman's Wharf. The Waymo which is Google's self-driving car
Yeah.
company, now has about 300 or 400 self-driving taxis roaming San Francisco. And to me, that was like, wow, this is kind of the only in Silicon Valley experience, where it's just kind of commonplace now to see cars without any drivers, and they're
It's
good, and
crazy.
they're good too. I mean, they're good drivers, better than humans, I think, already.
Yeah, I heard that somebody who was just up there and they were driving, that a lot of people from San Francisco, whatever, they they get what do you call it? Those self-driving cars, they're so perfect, so they're slowing down the traffic. Like the
Oh, do they
stop,
slow
the
down the traffic?
perfect, yeah, the perfect stop. They make sure that everybody is passing, and so people have been angry, like they're too slow. They're not doing, the fast driving. Well, I don't know if
It's
that's true.
funny. I mean, I did notice on my drive that the car was going above the speed limit. It was
Oh,
like
it
in a
was.
25, and I was going like 28 or 29. So,
Oh, wow.
they figured something out about that. There was a car double park. It went around it. There were some bicyclists who weren't quite in the bike lane, and it figured out how to maneuver that. I mean, I think this is a whole separate conversation, but I find you think about driving a car, there's millions of cases that you have to solve for that we as humans are just used to. You know, we just know that like when you're backing out of your driveway, you know, you want to pause for a minute and make sure there's not some skateboarder coming down the sidewalk not paying attention. But that's just one case out of a million. And, you know, these Waymos, as far as I can tell, have already figured most of them out. And there's plenty of other ones. I mean, there's Uber was working on some self-driving technology. When you drive around San Francisco, you see there's one called Zoom, I think, or Zoox. There's several. You see several self-driving cars. So there's a whole. I mean, that's a whole other. You're scared? Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. But I need to get used to it.
I mean, I would say that I'm way more scared of human drivers than I am scared of computer drivers.
Very, very insightful conversation. Always the smartest guy in the room, most charismatic guy in the room, and the one thing that people don't know, the hardest working guy in the room too.
But what people don't know, Seth, is I'm the only guy in the room over here. So
therefore, you win hardest working and least hardest working.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
All right. But do check out his book, Selling Your Marketing Agency, on Amazon, and seek him out if you are selling your marketing agency, because realize that it is going to be the biggest financial transaction of your life, and you need somebody who's been through it to help you through it, and he has been through it. So seek David out.
Thank you, Seth. You're an influencer. This is gonna help me. This is gonna help me go viral.
Yes, exactly.
He's gonna help you go viral. You better read the book.
Well, thank you very much, David, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for talking to us.
It was fun.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for watching or listening to The Internet is Crack. Tune in next week when we have another great conversation about robotics, AI, and the internet. You can watch us or listen to us on YouTube or Spotify or many other outlets. And don't forget to follow us on social media. See you next Monday.